Good morning. My name's Doug, and this is my friend Valentino. Would somebody like to hold Valentino? Okay. You know, when I was a young kid and I got hurt outside, I would come in and I'd be crying and I would say, "I hurt." And my mom or dad would give me a kiss where it hurt. And all of a sudden, it didn't seem to hurt as much. Has that ever happened to you? Yeah. Any of you have a dog? Have you ever had a sloppy, wet kiss from your dog? Yeah. I noticed that when you two came in, you hugged. Are you really close friends? Yeah. Oh, you've been gone for a while, huh? So it's really nice to see each other again, isn't it? Give each other a big hug. I think a couple of you are brothers and sisters. Are you brothers and sisters? You guys hug very much? Little, you do. Usually they don't do too much of that. But one of the wonderful things in life is a kiss. And I love to give my granddaughter, she's 10 years old, a kiss when she's staying with us every night when she goes to bed. The other day she said, "Grandpa, your kisses are a little bit slobbery." And I said, "Well, it's because I love you so much that I just want to slobber all over you." She didn't like that too much. But kisses are kind of nice. And there's something that we kind of look for. But one thing we must always remember is that sometimes we don't feel like being kissed. My granddaughter the other day was kind of mad at me because I wouldn't take her downtown, and she wouldn't give me a kiss. She said, "I don't feel like kissing." Sometimes we don't feel that way. And you know, we always belong to ourselves. So you always can choose whether you want to be kissed or not, whether you want to be touched or not. But always remember that affection and love and hugging and kissing are very, very wonderful as long as we ask permission and give permission. My little friend Valentino has a message. Would you press his little hand there where it says "press me" and then put him up so everybody can hear him? Would any of you like to give Valentino a big hug and kiss? Okay, thank you very much and for listening. I'm glad you came today. I'm very honored to be here this morning and share with you. I know so many of you, and it's great to be here. Lorette is our next door neighbor, so I feel I know you very well, and others of you have been involved in various causes, and it's really nice to be here and share with you. Someone once said that the most desirable thing in all the world is a kiss. And certainly it is an expression of the most extreme affection in most cases. It's also a barometer of affection. They say, psychologists tell us, that one of the first things that goes in a breakdown of a relationship is the kissing. Researchers also show that those who kiss a lot live 5 years longer, which gives the truth that if you pucker up, you won't tucker out. Sandy and I are very competitive. And we play games every night whenever we're available. And we play Yahtzee and other games, dominoes and so on. And we used to really get mad at each other, wouldn't speak to each other if we won too many games. So we finally decided that after every game, we're going to hug and kiss. And you know, it just seems to make everything nice again. The title of my sermon this morning comes actually out of a song, a chorus that we sing at our church that has a line in it that says, "Heaven met earth like a sloppy wet kiss." And I'll have to admit, when that was first sung in our church, it was quite startling. I felt a little uneasy that this kind of metaphor, a sloppy wet kiss, would be sung in such a solemn place. And I began to reflect on why that is such an unsettling metaphor. And I realized that religious people often struggle with the question of affection. Even though the Hebrews had a very strong view of affection. In fact, one of the books in the Hebrew Bible is called the Song of Solomon. And it's basically a book that celebrates love, sensual love. In fact, the book is entitled The Song of Songs, which in the Hebrew is the way they express the superlative. Lord of Lords means the greatest of all lords. King of Kings, the greatest of all kings. Vanity of vanities, the greatest of all vanities. Song of Songs, the greatest of all songs. And there's some wonderful songs in the Hebrew Scriptures. The whole Psalms starts out, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I lift up my eyes into the hills." Those are great songs. But there's even a greater song that starts this way. "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. Let me kiss him with a sloppy wet kiss." That's how the Hebrews said that the greatest of all songs should start. Why could that be the case? And this, of course, then became a grand metaphor for God. The only reason Song of Solomon got into the Hebrew Bible is because it was an allegory of Israel's love to God. But it's still a fantastic achievement that this should become a grand metaphor for God. Why was that the case? Well, the Hebrews made a dramatic change in the understanding of God in Western civilization. When they said, God said, "I don't want to be known any longer as El Shaddai, the God Almighty, but Yahweh." Not a noun, but a verb, presumably from the Hebrew "I am." A verbal understanding of God means that God is understood in how God's act. God is an ethical God. God is one the Old Testament scholar calls it ethical energy. That's how God wanted to be understood, and goes on, reveals to Moses as, "I am compassionate upon whom I am compassionate." Compassion now defines God. Ethical energy defines God. That's how God is to be known. And that's why God can be understood in this most extreme form of affection as a sloppy, wet kiss. God's extreme affection. Of course, this comes through in the original Christian version as greeting one another with a holy kiss, which many scholars consider this to be a ritual on par with the Lord's Supper or communion, but it soon dropped that. And now the relic of that is found maybe in the Orthodox, who kiss the icons, or kissing the Pope's ring. But in terms of greeting one another with a holy kiss, at least in America, that drops out. Why is that the case? Well, unfortunately, Hebrew thinking became engaged with Greek thinking, and this dualism that emerged in which affections and sensuality were looked upon as shameful, even sinful. And so that creates a tremendous problem for Christianity and their view of human sexuality and human relationships.
so that sexual pleasure becomes a sin in early Christian thinking. Virginity becomes the highest state. And the purpose of sex is to create virgins. Augustine said, however, we need to propagate the race so that this evil is turned into a good when one intends to have children. Sex or pleasure is still evil, but becomes a good when you intend to have children. And this undergirds the whole religious view of abortion and contraception. Abortion is wrong, contraception is wrong, not because a human being is a human being, because it assumes one had sex or pleasure. In fact, the great doctors Augustine and Thomas Aquinas said ensoulment, when the soul comes down into the body, doesn't occur at conception. For Augustine, he said, for women, it's 60 days after conception. For men, it's 90 days, which again shows you something about the attitude toward women. Augustine, or Thomas, the great doctor of the church, said it comes a quickening. When you feel that child, that's the soul coming in and making that kicking and whatever. And that's basically when ensoulment came. So what's happening today in the church is something that varies from the traditional view of the church. But so bizarre was this that Augustine said, it's better for a man to rape a woman if the intention of that man is to have a child than for a husband and wife to have sex for pleasure. That's how bizarre it becomes. And we can see the impact of that in today's world. In fact, Augustine gave all these measures of how one could have sex and diminish the pleasure. So the minute of orgasm, what you need to think about are the children that's coming out of that relationship. That diminishes the pleasure. I guess when you think about it, there's some truth to that, isn't there? And so this became very insidious in our own present-day understanding of human sexuality and so on. I want to share with you just a couple of incidences from the New Testament. They both involve a sloppy wet kiss, and they both have relevance, in my opinion, for today's issues. The first occurs at a dinner party, all-male dinner party in which women are not invited. And all of a sudden, a woman crashes the party. Some feel she was a prostitute. And she all of a sudden comes to Jesus, falls at his feet, and begins to give him sloppy, wet kisses all over his feet to wash his feet, which was common in the day before you ate. But she washes his feet with sloppy, wet kisses. And as she goes through this gauntlet of male stares, she realizes that she's doing something very extravagant, and so does Jesus. So the men are about to take her and beat her and throw her out. And Jesus says, leave her alone. Leave her alone. She's done a very beautiful, and in the Greek, beautiful and good are the same words. She's done a very good, beautiful thing to me. He so honors this woman that he says, wherever the good news is preached, forever, it shall be done in her honor. Something that is bestowed upon this woman that's never been bestowed upon any other human being, any other man. And so, Jesus' story of this beautiful woman who did a beautiful thing resonates today in the 21st century. First of all, leave her alone means stop teaching about the subordination of women in our churches and congregations. It also says, leave her alone. Stop the abuse of women in home, in the workplace, at school. We've been reading about the amount of sexual harassment and assaults that occur just on college campuses. 4 out of 5 women claim that they've been assaulted on a college campus. 9 out of 10 women in their lifetime have been assaulted in one way or the other. Leave her alone. Stop taking away her needs. 40% of all people in poverty today are single women, and that number is growing. Leave her alone. Give her a life chance. Give her the needs she needs. Leave her alone. Stop taking away her health care needs. And this is where the contraception abortion issue is still residual today. Leave her alone. Stop taking away her choices. Leave her alone. Stop the looksism that permeates our society so that women are forced to look a certain way. One of the great metaphors of this was the closing of the Borders bookstore. And what was in its place? An Ultra. Beauty for brains. Brains for beauty. That's what our society gives up. And so we live with the sin of looksism where women are forced to look a certain way to be acceptable in our world. Jesus came to reclaim human dignity in a world that was based on the honor culture. We all know about the honor culture in the Middle East. It was very strong today, was even stronger in Jesus' day. Males who are wealthy basically had all the honor. Everybody else lived in shame. And Jesus came to transfer that honor code, to dismiss it by saying the humble shall be exalted and the exalted shall be humbled, to transform that whole honor culture. We today live in an honor culture. In fact, Irving Goffman in his book talks about all of us trying to save face in almost everything we do. And we tend to give people special honors and so on. We live in that culture. And we're all trying to get respect. Rodney Dangerfield made a living out of that. He once said his wife was afraid of the dark. One time she saw him in the nude. Now she's afraid of the light. Or as the obstetrician said to his parents when he came out, "I'm sorry, we did everything we could, but he survived anyway." Probably one of the most dishonored groups in our society today are the homeless, or people we call today the houseless, people without houses. I am amazed at how disrespected and dishonored they are, and it's done so blatantly. Just a couple years ago, there was an article in one of our newspapers entitled "Bummed Out." And the editorialist likened our friends and neighbors without houses to mosquitoes and the pigeons that were nuisance insects and nuisance animals that you did away with by spraying, which is a horrible image given the Holocaust. But that's how a lot of folks are treated today. And this is something that Jesus came to change. They're called all kinds of names, slur words, vagrants, transients, indigents, bums, and so on. All this negative language, these slur terms that are used over and over again against our friends and neighbors, our brothers and sisters that are going through hard times. There's also a story that addresses that in the New Testament and also addresses the issue of a sloppy wet kiss, and that's the story of what we call the prodigal son, others call it the loving father. Here's a person who's made some bad choices, decides to undercut the peasant subsistence ethic that was in play at the time, take his money, he goes off, becomes houseless, foodless, and contaminated because he tends pigs, which in that culture contaminated a person. And in his degradation, the Bible says he came to himself. He came to himself. And he decided to go home and face a hostile village and hostile parents. Parents that he assumed his dad would say, "Do you know how you have dishonored your mother and your father? You're not welcome here." But that's not how the story goes. The father had been watching for him. And when he saw him, he ran out to greet him, and he hugged and kissed him with a sloppy wet kiss. Extravagant love. Ethical energy in a powerful way. And in that story, of course, the father represents God, God's love for Israel. And this is scandalous to the ones who brought this issue up, the cultural warriors who criticized Jesus for welcoming and eating with prostitutes and sinners that occasioned the story. Because of all unimaginable things, God is contaminated by touching the unclean son, the unwashed son. Can you imagine? But let me say this, that ethical energy finds itself contaminated in this world in which people are looked upon as contaminated. And that's how our houseless friends and neighbors are looked upon today and treated in our world. And so we need an extreme welcoming in this world in which we live. And that entails expunging years of prejudice, calling out all slurs. I mentioned a few of them. Another one that I hear in this community over and over again is the term aggressive panhandling. This, of course, is a very negative term. Aggressive even has the idea of violence. I get nonprofit groups that call me all the time, that send me mail. These nonprofits are pretty aggressive, but we don't call it that. We call it intensive fundraising. When a person without a home does it or going through hard times, it all of a sudden becomes aggressive panhandling. So one of the things I try to do, and many of us try to do, is call out when we hear these slurs. To us, these terms are in the same category as the N-word and should not be spoken. We need to rid our communities of what I call homeless injunctions. We just realized the gang injunction was struck down, and rightly so. But there's hundreds of houseless injunctions that are on the books. Not sleeping in certain places, no loitering, no sleeping in your vehicles, and so on. These are what I call houseless injunctions, injunctions directed toward people who are going through hard times. We need to be ready to support, for instance, the AB 5 in our state legislature, the Homeless Bill of Rights and Fairness Act, which would go a long way toward bringing justice and dignity. We need to be ready to practice hospitality. I shared with our HEAL group last week a passage in Isaiah 58, in which the wealthy of the city were going to go out and do some fasting. So they put on all kinds of sackcloth and went into ashes to do their fasting, and Isaiah said, that's not the fasting the Lord requires. The fasting the Lord requires that you feed the hungry and bring the homeless into your houses. That's ethical energy. That's what God demands of ritual, and not just of fasting, of any religious ritual. Whether it's prayer, it's reading, it's singing, it's worshiping, The worship I desire is ethical energy, feeding the hungry, bringing the homeless into your house, and doing justice. That's ethical energy. And then one of the things we've tried to do in this community is come together to bring religious people together and businesses together and government together and law enforcement together. And we formed a group called HEAL, Health, Empowerment, and Love. Your congregation has been deeply involved in this, and we appreciate it very, very much. You've done a lot, and I commend you for your help and your support. Many of you are part of that group. One of the things we do is what we call generous listening. And so we have a meet and greet once a month. In fact, the next one's tomorrow at the community center, which we bring people together. The last group we had, there were 45 people there. And we just sit around and we do something that isn't done much in Santa Barbara. We allow people to speak and share their minds, share their thoughts, share resources, what's on their hearts, and kind of like a powwow, getting to know each other, respecting people's comments and decisions, making them feel a part of the community, make them feel like they're welcome, make them feel like there's hospitality in this community. Another thing we've supported are the warming shelters, and you've been deeply involved in that too, and especially your sibling church in Santa Barbara, as well as this congregation, and we thank you for that and providing meals and so on. We also have a Hope Garden, helping open possibilities of employment, pathways to employment. And I think Marty has a little short video on that. And what we do is...
projects, and HOPE, as you probably know, the name is an acronym that stands for Helping Open Paths to Employment, HOPE. And we try to work with homeless people to help them get back into employment. So it's a development rather than a relief model. We don't want to just hand out and give them things that will last for a day. We want to help them develop themselves to become self-sufficient, where they won't depend on handouts and panhandling and stuff. And the garden, the organic garden project here at Doug's place is one of the projects of HOPE.
They also have a jewelry co-op, and they make jewelry, and there's some that's available in the back, the little bookmarks. So if you purchase a book of mine, you can also purchase a really nice bookmark and help support our HOPE program. Another thing we've done, we work with New Beginnings to get a safe parking program here in Goleta. And even though it's been very difficult in some situations because there's still a lot of NIMBYism in any community, but we do have some safe parking places now that are filled. One of the things we've done at our meet and greets is to try to survey people to see what the needs are, and the second most pressing need was for showers. And so through the benefactor of Grace Lutheran Church and some money they came into with the selling of the religious center, they provided us with a shower trailer that will be here in October, and I think Marty has a little video on that too.
This may look like just another white truck pulling into a lot on Victory Boulevard, but actually it's a mobile shower unit that drives around the San Fernando Valley 6 days a week, serving people who have no access to a bathroom. The people waiting for this once-a-week shower have hit rock bottom. How does that shower make you feel?
Brand new, I'm clean, I'm energetic, so I'm really happy that they have this type of service here.
Some of you may have read the article this week in the news press about the shower buses in San Francisco and folks that have been a part of that program. And so we're hoping that this will fulfill a need. Once again, we're hoping that we work ourselves out of using that shower trailer because we want people to be able to be housed. We also are working with Doctors Without Walls so that if they have people they need to examine, possibly they can take them in the shower trailer and do a more thorough exam. We see this as a hygiene trailer as well. And of course, our ultimate goal is housing. A few years ago, we started Habitat for Humanity, and your congregation's been involved in that. Marty's been involved in it, and they're building homes now in Santa Barbara. But one of the things we're concerned about is that Goleta is now going through redoing its zoning ordinances and also re-examining the state-mandated 8-year housing element in Goleta. And we're attending all those meetings, and we're putting in our input that we need extremely low-income housing. And we want this to be spelled out, and we're trying to make sure that anytime any development comes into Goleta, that includes a fair share of extremely low-income housing. Not just low, but extremely low, which the state mandates that Goleta must provide 117 units of extremely low income within the next 8 years. Already, Self-Help Housing, which is going to be doing the Goleta, or the Los Caneros project of almost 500 homes, 90 of those are going to be low income, and 14 of those have been promised that they will be extremely low income. So we're happy about that, and we're going to make sure that that is spelled out on any of these kinds of low income, because we believe that ultimately the issue of houselessness is houses, supportive housing. And we're very supportive of the Pescadero Lofts project in Isla Vista, which will be 33 units directed only to people who are without homes. So Father John is in the head of that, and we're very supportive of those kinds of projects. We're supportive of the projects like Worth Street Reach is doing in trying to provide senior citizen housing here in Santa Barbara and Goleta. In closing, I'd just like to read a poem that Sandy and I put together as we got involved with our friends and neighbors without homes. And people seem to have all kinds of reasons why folks are homeless, and it got us to reflecting, and this is what we came up with. The person nearby in scruffy rags, crouched with sprawled cardboard, gleaning slim charity for scanty food. You might, if human, notice him, but not see her contained sorrow in pale cheeks, in hollow eyes, not see his hope and his burden, just to be. Who knows the reasons? Born of a mother in poverty, a father's mean switch, the law's stern stare, a war's savage scene, a balm of poison, unimaginable loss, unspeakable rejection, harmed in a million ways. Who knows? Who cares? Thank you.
Remain by itself, it has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing. A lifelong sharing of love with others.